Good evening, everyone. I want to say thank you so much for being here with me this evening. We are going to talk about spirit communication for the 21st century tonight. And I want to tell you, I'm so grateful to see so many people here. I want to ask everyone who's here to share what you learn, talk about this to your friends, to your relatives. If you know people who are interested in spirit communication or who are getting information from spirits themselves, tell them about this program, tell them about all of my programs. Our world is waking up right now. And as we move deeper into the 21st century, spirit communication is going to become something which is an everyday occurrence. And right now, so many people are having experiences they can't explain in any other way other than to think they're either going crazy and they need help. Those of you who are here on this webinar with me this evening are people who already have had those experiences. You already know that something's going on in your life that you want to know more about. Something's going on within you that you want to know more about, that perhaps you want to develop and move forward more completely. Okay, I'm going to take a moment out because I just got a message here from someone who says the sound is not coming through. Let me ask Lisa. I'm seeing you in the chat. Lisa's my assistant. Lisa, is the sound okay on your end?
Yes, the sound is fine.
Okay, so the gal who just came in and said the sound's not coming through on my computer, this is going to be your computer's issue. So you know that you're going to have to work with your sound and your microphone a little bit to get the sound to come through for you. So understand that this is a worldwide phenomenon that's going on, that you are experiencing right now. The reason I'm teaching this class this evening, this is interesting. Someone was not allowed to enter this meeting because it's full. Okay. Lisa, I'm going to let you take care of that. It says, if you wish to have others join, you must dismiss one or more current attendees. I don't understand that. That's never happened before. So, Lisa, if you can resolve that, fine. If you can't, I'm just going to keep right on going. We are having, as you folks have recognized in our world right now, the field of communications, especially electronic communications, is going a little bit crazy. And we're at a point where if a computer can, or a program online can possibly have some kind of difficulty, it does. So it really isn't surprising me. Lisa, we're having a lot of people be turned away right now. If you can, contact the GoToMeeting people and ask them to change whatever it is they're doing. This should not be an issue, shouldn't be a problem. Okay. At any rate, here we are. And those people, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. If there are people who have signed up and are unable to get in, you are definitely going to have the recording, and we'll make sure that you have the opportunity to answer whatever questions you have after the fact, because I will be giving you a chance at the end of this session this evening to answer questions. Lisa, they're just pouring in. I think we might have set this meeting up on the wrong platform, so I think it might be our mistake. I suspect that on the GoToMeeting side of GoToMeeting, you can only have a certain number of people. It's a limited amount. On the GoToWebinar side is where we can take a huge amount of people. I think we set it up on the wrong side. Okay, but here we are, and so we're going to continue with tonight's session, and my apologies to anyone who's unable to get in. As I said, this is our mistake, not yours. So anyone who is here or isn't here, who should have been here, who's been trying to get in, who wants to have their money back, you're going to be able to get that money back for this. I'm not going to charge you for what you weren't able to get in and see. Okay. I'm getting all kinds of comments here. Folks, I'm going to ignore what's happening in the chat room. My assistant Lisa is in the chat room. Understand she's still dealing with the GoToMeeting people, trying to see if we can expand the people who can get into the seminar this evening. So if she doesn't respond to your questions in the chat room, please be assured she's going to be able to get back to you, and she will see them before the end of the session. Meanwhile, if you don't mind, I'm going to get back on track because that's what you're here for. You're here to find out what Sandy knows about spirit communication and the way it's going to proceed in the 21st century. Folks, I'm recognizing a lot of names that were here last year with me when for the very first time I took mediumship out of my long series of classes, the Anastasi system of psychic development, which teaches you all the basics and all of the foundation that you need, right up to becoming a medium and learning to do mediumship on a professional level in that program. I had never taught mediumship or spirit communication, as we call it, outside of that program until 1 year ago. A year ago, for the first time, I gave an overview of what mediumship is because so many people are exploring it, wanting to develop it, and having their psychic sensitivities and sensitivities to energies on the other side awaken. Now, a lot of people who took that seminar last year are repeating it with me tonight, and I'm glad you're here because this session is not a repeat of that session. Folks, this session is an update on that. It's taking us further because so many changes have happened energetically on our planet in the last year. So what I'm going to be teaching you this evening is taking all of those energy changes, including a shift in dimension that we are all experiencing, which is bringing our psychic sensitivity so close to the surface that people who really would have called themselves deadheads a year ago are now totally awake psychically and saying, oh my God, there's a whole world out here that I never knew existed. This is why I'm putting this information in a webinar that can be absorbed in a very short period of time so that you folks understand what's going on with you. And it's the reason why I'm asking everybody who's here this evening to share this information with your loved ones, with your friends, with your colleagues. Don't sit on it. Share it, okay? Because I'm not saying share the video. Share your knowledge. Learn it and share it. Tell people about my programs. Tell people about any programs for psychic development and mediumship that are happening in your area that you hear about online. Everyone right now needs to be embracing these new abilities that are awakening within them. And that really is the first thing that I wanted to speak about this evening. Let's talk about just what spirit communication is and why it's becoming so widespread. In the classes that I teach, in my family, in the friends and groups that I belong to, it's very common for people to talk about, wow, I had a dream that my deceased father was in last night. I had a dream that someone I knew 30 years ago is dying and needs to hear from me. I had a dream that someone is going to have a car accident, an illness. Is this real? Should I tell them about it? And I'm sure that these things are resonating with you. Everyone here has been receiving some of this information yourselves. For many of you, that's why you're here. You're saying to yourself, Sandy, what's going on? Why is this starting to speed up? Why am I getting more of these communications? There is a world, my friends, that interfaces with ours. If you're coming from the Judeo-Christian part of the world, you've been taught that heaven is above us, hell is below us, And here we are on our physical plane living our very limited lives. Physics has shown us that there are multi-dimensions in this universe, and that all of those dimensions are existing here at the same time and the same place, simply at different vibratory levels. So guess what? Heaven is not above us. Heaven is sitting right where you are right now. If there is a hell, it's not below us. It's also sitting right where you are right now. It is another dimension that exists, coexists at the same time and place that ours is, but at a different vibratory level. So what's happening in our world right now is the entire world is moving through an evolutionary step up the ladder. Everybody here has heard about that. There are so many different takes on this. Some people are saying we're just becoming more spiritual. That might be the simplest explanation. Some people are saying our vibratory level is becoming less dense. We're moving up that ladder towards greater connection to the Godhead. That's also fairly easy to understand. Some people are saying we're moving from a three-dimensional world through the fourth dimension and into the fifth dimension. That's a little bit harder to understand. People need to go out and explore what are these dimensions. The bottom line is that as we evolve, our energy becomes less dense. We begin to vibrate literally at a faster level. As we're evolving, we humans here on planet Earth, as we are evolving and our vibratory level is increasing, it's bringing us closer to the plane where we find people who've passed on, our guides. It's bringing us closer to those less dense planes that are very close to that higher vibration we are achieving. So as this difference in vibration levels out, we're able to look across that gap, so to speak, and see and hear and receive information and also communicate information far more clearly than we ever have before. Folks, I do not believe that this is going away. It's my belief that we are moving into an era which is probably going to last for at least several thousand years or more, where we're going to be able to shift our vibration that tiny little bit we need to be able to make those connections with people who've passed on, to make those connections with our guides, even with people, beings that live in another dimension. And I know I sound a little bit way out to some of you. You're stretching your minds to understand what I'm talking about. This is why spirit communication right now is so very, very important. Everyone is developing in an evolutionary way. Everyone's vibration is speeding up. Everyone's vibration is lifting them to a higher level, and everyone is going to be having some kind of visitation, some kind of connection to the spirit world. For many people, it's coming through dreams. More people than ever before are having waking visions, and those waking visions might be about things, or that might be a person. Some of you might actually see a person walking around that you know to be deceased, and you're saying to yourself, am I seeing things here correctly? Is that person really not here? Okay, so what is spirit communication? Spirit communication occurs anytime you see or feel or hear, and that could be audibly outside of your ear or telepathically in your head, information that comes from a source that you cannot see, that you cannot physically look at with your physical eyes, touch with your physical hand. Spirit communication is what we call communicating with that which is invisible to our physical five senses. And I'm going to give you a chance. I hope you're taking notes and writing down your questions, because I am going to give you a chance at the end, before the seminar is done, for you to ask these questions. Okay? So if you have questions, you're going to have a chance to get them answered. Okay. I think I've already covered this. Who can do spirit communication? A year ago, I said, well, everybody can, because that's true. We are all born with the capacity to develop our psychic senses. Those are the five senses that mirror our physical senses, but allow us to see, feel, hear, touch into the invisible planes. All of us are born with those extrasensory perceptions also, not just our five physical senses. For some of us, they're more highly developed than others. All of us can take those senses and work within my Anastasi system of psychic development or a similar program to be able to further develop those senses, to be able to communicate with the other side. That's what I would have been telling you a year ago. Today, I'm telling you that even, and this is where this gets a little dangerous, even without the education, everyone is having these experiences. You could be sitting next to someone at work who's got one of her dead relatives standing by her elbow, telling her how she's supposed to do her job. And if you're looking at her and wondering why she's acting so strangely, she's sitting there saying, I hope nobody notices that I've got somebody talking to me that I can't see. Okay, this is the kind of thing that's going on right now. People are experiencing these extrasensory visitations from the world that's right next to our own. That's literally in the same space that we are, but at a different vibratory level. And because of our evolution, we're able, like having a telephone, we're able to connect into that space. And we're able to see and to hear and sometimes even to touch people that we know to be passed on. And so who can do spirit communication right now? For sure, everyone can. But the dangerous thing is that there are many people who aren't getting any training, have no real understanding of what they're doing, who unfortunately are saying, oh, wow, I can hear and talk to dead people, so therefore I can put up my shingle and go out and be a medium. But those same people may not know how to protect themselves. They may not know how to raise their vibration so that they're attracting the spirits from a higher level that will give beneficial information to the people they're working with and to them. There's a lot to spirit communication. If you really want to become a psychic medium, which is what we call people who do spirit communication professionally, there's a lot more to it than just putting out a shingle because I have this ability. And so a lot of people are stumbling into this at this point and can unfortunately get themselves and the people they're working with into a lot of trouble. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes, unless they get somewhere along the line the proper training to be able to do this skill in a way that is beneficial to themselves and to everyone around them, as opposed to causing harm. Okay? And boy, it goes, the potential for harm goes from not having the right ethics to literally attracting something into your life that's an invisible force that could be very negative. There's a whole gamut of things that you really need to be aware of. Now, if you are one of those people who are just stumbling into it for the first time and you haven't called it or asked for it, you're not going to have too much to worry about. But if you're the person who on a routine basis is calling in spirits without any kind of protection organization or ethics, you and the people you're working with and for could definitely be at risk for a lot of problems. So who can do spirit communication? Everyone can. The good part is that every single one of you here on this webinar has the potential to be a psychic medium if that's what you want. You all have the potential to control that capability within yourself in a way that it is beneficial in your life, not something which is detrimental, even if you don't want to do it professionally. The negative part is that there are hundreds of thousands of people in our world who are having this experience, who have no knowledge, don't want to get trained, don't even know that training is possible, that don't have ethics, and that can bring a lot of harm into our world because of this new skill that they are suddenly being visited with. Okay? So it's a double-edged sword, as so many things are. Now, the development of spirit communication ability is a natural progression. I've been teaching this to my students for years. First, and this is what everybody goes through, we have spent lifetimes, all of us, developing these skills, and most of us aren't even aware of it. First, we develop the basic skills, those skills that mirror our 5 physical senses. So we think, right? We communicate verbally with each other, and the psychic skill that comes out of that is telepathy. We begin to develop the ability to read each other's minds. And we've all had that experience, right? Where you're finishing your husband or your wife's sentences. Okay? We've all had that experience. That's telepathy. And as we're getting further into our higher development, telepathy is becoming more and more rampant. Okay? It's happening more frequently with your friends, with your husband and wife, with you yourself, knowing that the show you want is going to be on TV, even though you never saw it, and just clicking onto it. Telepathy is all over the place. Same thing with empathy. We're able to feel emotionally. Well, step that up, and it becomes feeling somebody's emotions energetically, and that's called empathy. And if you studied my psychic development tips and my psychic protection tips, you will know that empathy can be both receptive, which is what we're most familiar with, feeling someone's emotions, but also generative, where we're projecting our emotion at someone. So empathy often leaves a person feeling really, really like they're not in control of themselves. It's one of the senses that is really developing at an incredibly quick rate in our world right now. And in my psychic development, or my psychic webinar that I'm going to be offering next month, I'm going to be talking a lot about empathy. So if that interests you, make sure you come back and see me again a month from now. Okay? Meanwhile, empathy is another one of these basic skills that we are all developing now. Likewise, clairvoyance, which is the ability to see things that other people don't see, or that people who are merely looking with their physical eyes don't see. Some of you have seen shadows walking by. Some of you have actually seen a spirit. Many of you right now, I love this because your clairvoyance is developing. You're beginning to see dimension in everything that you look at. It's looking almost like you can see around something, not just see the surface of it. So we're all beginning to really see development in our clairvoyance. Clairsentience, which is or pardon me, the ability to feel with your hand. The offshoot of clairsentience is feeling vibration, literally like a magnetic field. But the offshoot of that is psychometry, where we can feel the vibration on an object and read that. All of these skills are starting to be developed, okay? The normal progression is that these basic skills begin to develop and they grow out of our physical senses. And it can take centuries. It can take, if you're a believer in reincarnation as I am, it can take 200 lifetimes for these basic skills to really develop. Look at how everybody in our world is developing them right now. Once those basic skills are developed, it opens the gateway to the higher self. Everybody knows what that is, right? The higher self, that higher part of yourself that exists in that non-physical. Well, once you have that door to the higher self open, channeling ability begins. And that channeling ability is literally hearing your higher self. You might hear your higher self audibly. Most of us just feel it. We have an urge to do something or not do something. And when we have that, we begin to realize that we have a strong connection to our soul or to the God force in us, to our higher self. Many people use different terms for it. But what we're doing is we're beginning to get inner direction. Those of us who begin to get that inner direction also begin to start to connect with our guides. Because when we begin to channel, we begin to, through our higher self, begin to connect with a higher force, which could be people we've loved who have kind of hung around to help us, want to show us how to live our lives better, or they could be spiritual teachers on the other side who have elected to guide you. The thing is that these beings come through your higher self. So your higher self and they are part of a closed system. So when you're developing these basic skills and when you're just learning to channel your higher self and your guides, you don't really need a whole lot of protection because you're only really working within your own being, within the sphere of your own energy. But out of that channeling ability very quickly grows the ability for spirit communication. Why? Because as soon as you begin to connect with your guides, you now understand on an energetic level that you can connect to people and things that are on that non-physical level around us. And automatically, you begin to start psychically to reach out instead of just to reach up energetically. As soon as you begin to do that, you are now encountering spirits that aren't coming through your higher self. They're not coming through your normal natural protection that we all have. They're now coming to you from the world around you, and they could be anybody. Okay? So when I teach my psychic development series, I do follow this progression. And when we get to spirit communication, I am teaching you the most intense, highest form of protection that I know so that you're not going to be at risk attracting somebody who maybe was an axe murderer or a negative entity who is trying to drain your energy or any of the negative things that also exist on the other side. Okay, because the universe is a very big place, my friends. And when we learn to communicate interdimensionally, which is what I'm really talking about here, there are so many things out there. There are millions and millions and millions of different life forms. We humans aren't the only ones out there. So you have the ability to connect with your dead relatives, yes, but you also have the ability to connect with things that you really, are going to be surprised that even exist. Okay, and some of them could be good and some of them could be bad. That's why you protect tremendously when you're doing spirit communication, because you want to make sure that you're connecting with the good things, not the bad things. Okay? Now, once again, this is a natural progression, and it's a progression that when I teach my classes, I do follow. I know many, many teachers, a lot of them world famous mediums who run schools where people want to learn to do mediumship, and they jump right in and start teaching a mediumship right from the beginning. I don't believe in doing that, and there are two big reasons. One is that people have much better success with spirit communication if they've first taken the time to consciously develop and learn to control their basic skills and become a channel, opening the door to the higher self and your guides before they do spirit communication. And two, because when you're teaching spirit communication, you really have to teach that protection. Otherwise, your students can end up in trouble. Okay? So that is a natural progression that all of us follow in our evolution. And I want to make that real clear. All of you here have spent maybe 200 lifetimes developing your basic skills. Some of you are already channels. If you're not already, you're in the process of learning to open that door to your higher self and your guides, aren't you? Through meditation, through Tai Chi Chuan, or whatever techniques you're using that are developing that energetic connection. And the next step for all of you, with or without Sandy's help or anybody's help, is going to be spirit communication. It is a natural outgrowth. And folks, we are right here in our development. Can you imagine? We're moving into a world. Young people, most of them are already telepathic and conscious of it. They sit there on their electronic devices. They don't talk to each other. And when one of them picks up the electronic device, even though the other one might be eating dinner 50 miles away, they get up and go and get their iPhone because they know that their friend is texting them. Okay? Just watch it with your children. These basic skills are already here in the next generation, and a lot of them are already channeling too. We are very soon going to be living in this world where this is commonplace. I kind of laughed to myself because we're developing AI to do all of these things, and by the time the AI is here, you're going to have half the population doing it without AI. Isn't that fun? I think I've made myself clear. This is a natural progression, and it is happening and happening very, very quickly. Time is speeding up. I think I talked a little bit about this just before. Someone like Edgar Cayce, okay, was doing spirit communication, right? He was talking to entities outside of himself. Someone who is channeling is getting information from their higher self and their guides. When you're getting the information coming straight down through your higher self and your guides, it carries a tremendous amount of protection with it. I still teach protection when I do this, but you still are a closed system. Your higher self and your guides are part of you. When you're doing spirit communication, the spirit's outside of yourself. You need to be protected. Remember that movie Ghost with Whoopi Goldberg? And that spirit, benevolent spirit, but still in all, a spirit jumped into her and how she freaked out? Folks, that can really happen. Okay? Of course, she kind of overplayed it a little bit, but whether that spirit who might jump into you is benevolent or whether they're mean, it still is going to be an extremely uncomfortable situation, and you really don't want it to happen. Okay? So in spirit communication, you need lots of protection, and the being you're talking to is not in any way, shape, or form connected to you. It's literally like having a telephone line between you and the person on the other side. When you're doing channeling, your higher self is up here, your guides are up here. It's all coming down through that channel, and it is a higher part of you. Even your guides are coming in, even if they're separate entities, they're coming in and being brought in through your higher self. So everything is going through the lens, if you will, of that higher part of you that's being very careful what and who it allows to come through. Those of you who attained higher levels of consciousness through meditation have already experienced a lot of this. This can be a tremendous just expansion of energy that is just beautiful and wonderful to experience when you feel that energy from that higher part of you just wash through you and fill you. And there are different types of spirit communication as well. And I'm going to just touch upon these quickly because a lot of you are already experiencing this. The kind of spirit communication that we're most familiar with is, we go to the psychic medium, and the psychic medium sits there and tells us about our dead, friend who's coming in to say hello, and maybe gives us their friend's name and how they died, and tells us what they look like and where they live, and gives us enough information where they can really give us the understanding, and this is one of the most important parts of spirit communication, that there is life after death, i.e., through what they're able to tell us about our dead loved one, we come to understand that they're really talking to that person. And we come to understand there really is no death. There really is simply a change from physical to energetic, and that person in their consciousness still exists. They still are there. They still can see us and hear us. It's one of the most important things that a psychic medium can do that's helpful to the people that they work with, that proof that people need that their loved ones are okay. So that's the most common form of spirit communication. And when you go to a psychic medium, that's the kind of thing you're hoping for. That's the kind of thing that you expect. Now, it's not the only kind of mediumship. Some mediums are what we call trance mediums, where I'm going to go back to this slide. They're not talking to the person who's outside of them. Remember back to Whoopi Goldberg? They let that spirit come in and literally take over and use their mouth and use their eyes and use their physical body. It must be terribly uncomfortable. I do not teach my students to do that. I personally feel it's very dangerous. Just think what would happen if the spirit decided it liked your body better than being invisible, okay? So I do not teach that. Matter of fact, I teach my students to protect against that. But that's called trance mediumship. And so if you see someone who literally becomes the person, you know that they've gone into trance and they've allowed that spirit to completely take them over. Now, related to trance mediumship, but different, is something called physical mediumship. In physical mediumship, again, I'm showing you this past diagram, the spirit is still outside, but is helping you through guiding a hand or guiding your eyes to make a physical gesture that your client, or the sitter as it sometimes is called, the person you're reading, is going to recognize. So when you see someone doing physical mediumship, it's not the same as trance mediumship. The medium is still there. The person who's doing the spirit communication is still very much there. They haven't been taken over by the dead person, which is what would happen in trance mediumship. Okay? In physical mediumship, the medium is still themselves, but they might be shaking their finger, which is a characteristic the dead person did. They might be constantly doing this with their hair, and that is communicating to the sitter, the person getting the reading, oh wow, that's exactly what my aunt used to do all the time. So a lot of times a physical medium doesn't even know that they're making these gestures. Maybe they're pacing back and forth. Maybe all of a sudden they've got a little bit of a limp. That doesn't mean they've taken the spirit on. It doesn't mean they're doing trance mediumship. It means that the physical medium, the person has the capability of physical mediumship, and they're able to give a physical gesture that is another form of proof that the person in spirit is communicating. Okay, so physical mediumship is definitely different than trance mediumship. A lot of times people who are physical mediums are afraid they're going to get taken over. It's not the same thing. Okay, if you're taken over by the spirit, that's done in trance. The spirit, it literally takes you over and you're not there. Okay, in physical mediumship, the person doing the spirit communication is very much there, but the gestures would be the gestures of the person that they're talking to in spirit. Okay, now there are also people who, and I don't know what you would call this, who do a form of mediumship. They're very artistic, and they're able to draw this spirit. And I've seen many different renditions of this. One artist I know she'll do your portrait, and all around you, she'll show the different people who were in your life, who are either your guides or who are the spirits around you who are wanting to talk to you and help you. So art can be another form of that. There's a person named George Anderson that is often called the father of modern mediumship. Some of you remember his name. He was on the Joel Martin radio show all the way back in the 1970s and 80s. And sometimes he appears on TV even now, although he's much older than he was then, obviously. And you'll see him using what could almost be automatic writing, except he's not really writing, he's scribbling. And what he's doing is he's using the scribbling and his pad to open the channel so that he can bring in the person who's in spirit who wants to speak with you. Okay? So he's kind of doing a combination of automatic writing and he uses the writing to open a channel so that, and that's related to this artistic form of mediumship that I was talking about before. I've also seen people who are, I'm going to call them the artistic mediums, with lack of a better title. I've never seen a title for it, who are able to get writing and words in perhaps another language. They could be receiving. Now, this is from, you're getting this information through something similar to automatic writing, but it's half between automatic writing and art mediumship. And you're able to get information from the deceased person that comes in written form. There are people who write books that are channeled in this way. There are people who write books that are inspired in that way. Okay, not the same thing. Channeled is literally the person in spirit is writing the book. You're just repeating what they give you. It's coming out your hand, or it's coming out your paintbrush, because it could be a drawing as well. Whereas in the channeling form of mediumship, the inspired form of mediumship, they're telling you the story and you're putting it down in your own words. But it is still a form of mediumship in that you're making the connection to the other side. Okay? So it's opening the doorway into mediumship in a way that this time comes through that channel, comes through the higher self. Are you beginning to get an understanding that there are so many different forms of spirit communication? And we've only just touched the surface of these. Okay? The biggest ones are the trance mediumship, the physical mediumship, and regular spirit communication, where the spirit is giving you information that could come through clairvoyantly, i.e. you see things that they're showing you. It could come through telepathically, where you're getting words or images in your head. It could come through feelings. Believe it or not, people in spirit can send you feelings, so you can get a tremendous amount of information by interpreting your feelings. People in spirit can give you information through giving you the feeling that there's a heaviness or something going on in your own body. And that can also be very difficult to separate. So again, it's one of the reasons we need to be protected. The person in spirit might be showing you how they died. Maybe they died of a heart attack and you feel like you're getting a heart attack. So you definitely want to be protected so that you're not getting that feeling in the same direct way that the person who died of a heart attack got it. Okay? I think you're beginning to recognize how all of this works. They are on the other side. They're using the person who is the spirit medium or spirit communicator as a telephone. I often tell people when I'm doing spirit communication that I'm the telephone operator. I'm not really here. The spirit is talking through me to the client. Okay? We are the telephone operator. Here's a good question. Can spirits really haunt a person or a place? I don't know if anybody has asked that in the chat room yet. The fact is they can. It's also important to note that most places that are said to be haunted really aren't. Energy has a way of collecting. I remember years ago someone said, Sandy, can you come to my house and clear it because I know I have a ghost haunting my living room. And I said, they're around the TV, aren't they? And how did you know? And I said, because you sit there focusing your energy every single night on the television while your brain is going about all the worries and all the fears you have. So, of course, when you turn the TV off, that energy is now collected around it, not just from you, but your whole family. Would you like me to come and clear your television? Okay. So remember, energy has a way of collecting. And any place that you sit a lot, any place you focus your attention a lot, any place that you have strong emotional connections to, because emotion is very powerful and has an energy that's real close to the physical plane, is going to develop this very powerful space of almost like a feeling like a person is there. I remember when I was a little kid, you're going to laugh at this because I'm sure everybody here did it. My parents had a shower curtain over the bathtub, and every time I went into the bathroom, I couldn't go to the bathroom until I peeked behind the shower curtain because it always felt like somebody was there. Haven't you had that experience? It feels like someone's behind the shower curtain. Why? Because when people take a shower, all that energy and all that emotional, mental energy that's gathered around them all day long is washed from their energy field, from their aura, and collects around the shower. So yes, after a while, it feels like there's a person in there who's going to be checking you out while you're going to the bathroom. So what's really happening there is just energy collection. So it's really difficult when you're first learning to do spirit communication to tell the difference between a space that merely has collected energy, like a movie theater would, people staring at a movie screen. Think about it. Or is there really a spirit that's living there? Now, one of my students who now teaches my psychic development system, his name is Carl Woodall, came to learn how to turn this stuff off because this description is exactly what happened to him. He was seeing his deceased friends who would be sitting there on the stairs, and his deceased friends were going up and down the stairs in his house, walking right through him. And he, like so many of you, was developing his clairvoyance, seeing the spirits, and his clairsentience, feeling the spirits, and he didn't know how to turn it off, and it was driving him crazy. So in his case, yes, he was actually seeing real spirits. So we have many ways of testing. Is there that electromagnetic discharge that happens when there's a spirit around? And there are ghost hunters. And it would be fun to go to a place where people have detected the psychic energy that's left behind, that residue, when somebody has been, or a house or space has been haunted. But I've got to tell you that when you develop your spirit communication skills, you don't need that. You can walk into a space and know is what you're feeling simply residue energy, or is what you're feeling really a haunting, a spirit who wants to be in that space and doesn't want to leave it. Now, that said, I also want to tell you that most times when a place is actually haunted, that spirit is very low key because they don't want you to know they're there. They're just living their lives because they never left. So, for example, you could have an old house that the person who owned that house maybe 100 years ago is still there because it was a comfortable place for them. and they're in their own dimension, and they're still in that nice, safe, comfortable place. And every once in a while, you might see them walking down the stairs or have the feeling that they're in the room with you. Because in that moment, perhaps you're in what we call an alpha state, where you're more relaxed, so your psychic skills are closer to the surface, and you're able to bridge that dimensional rift and make a connection with them and either see them or feel them. So it's not uncommon for people to pass on and remain connected to the place they felt at home and comfortable with. But usually those spirits don't make themselves known. You usually don't even know that they're there unless your own psychic ability is waking up to be able to see them. There's also the case of invisible friends. Many, many, many children have invisible friends when they're children because as children, we don't know to put up walls to those psychic abilities. And then our parents come around and say, oh, you don't really have a friend, right? That's not real. That's your imagination. And eventually that goes away. But yes, invisible friends could be either a person elsewhere on the planet who's alive and physical like you that you're making a telepathic connection to, or they could be a person in spirit who maybe is looking after you, maybe one of your guides, or maybe it's a person who occupied the place you're living in the past and just reached out to you because as a child you're more open and you gave them a sense of belonging. Why do spirits stay in a place for a while and then leave? If they are the quote unquote haunt of the place, well, they'll stay there as long as they need to feel safe and comfortable. And then eventually, just like all of us, they will evolve and they'll find something more important to do with their lives in the spirit world. So just because a place is haunted today does not mean it's going to be haunted next year. Those spirits that are, the ghost spirits that we always associate in a negative fashion, the Tower of London with the lady with the head under her arm and all that stuff. Those things are very, very far and few between. And I honestly think that many times when you find that violent death that supposedly has a spirit hanging on forever to get even or whatever, I think very frequently that isn't a spirit at all. It's psychic residue. Because when there has been violence, you do get a lot of psychic residue. And so sometimes it can be difficult to tell the difference between the residue and the actual spirit. A person who's an experienced spirit communicator is going to be able to tell the difference. And likewise, those electronic devices that ghost hunters use should also be able to tell the difference between a static charge, which is residual energy, versus an actual spirit that is in motion and that has a different vibrational level. Okay? That's definitely something a lot of you in here I think are interested in and will probably want to dig into more deeply on your own. It's a fun area to look into. My friend, and also my person that I take coaching with and who is my person that works with me on my website a great deal, Kayla Ambrose, has written a whole lot of books on this. She is a definite ghost person. She's written a whole series of ghosts around the country. So I strongly recommend you check out her books, and you're going to have a lot of fun with them because she goes into a lot of these things and actually has direct experiences with the ghosts that she has discovered. More her area, ghost hunting, than mine would be. Okay? This is an important question that you folks should be asking yourselves because I've talked about the need for protection. Is spirit communication dangerous? If you dream about your deceased relative coming to visit you, that's not dangerous. That's a very loving, wonderful thing. Say thank you. That was initiated by the person in spirit, and you just got a wonderful hand reached out to you to say hi. If you're in meditation and suddenly you get this revelation from a deceased relative who's in spirit, That wasn't dangerous. They initiated the connection. You were not seeking it. And they initiated it in a way where you were very settled and comfortable. If one or two things, if you are initiating the connection yourself, okay, I'm going to try to communicate whether I'm using a Ouija board, which I don't recommend, they tend to attract low-level negative spirits, or whether you're just, working with Sandy Anastasi's level 5 and 6 because you skipped all the stuff that leads up to it, which I also don't recommend doing, and you're saying, okay, I'm going to just jump into mediumship because I know that I have natural ability. If you're asking for it, in other words, you must take steps to protect yourself. Because when you're initiating the contact, whether you're doing it through automatic writing, whether you're doing it through meditation, or whether you're opening a channel and trying to do it that way, whether you're doing it in 1,000 other ways that different teachers are teaching you, if you are initiating the contact, anything can come in if you are not protected. And if you want to know how to get protection, on my website, I have a free area. It's free for a reason, free downloads. And on my website, I have 2 protection techniques that are very powerful. I teach them in my level 4, 5, and 6 for the Anastasi system. The first one is invoking the archangels, and the second one is called the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. And if you're going to try mediumship outside of my program or another teacher's program that you've investigated and know they're real and the program works, I strongly recommend that you do both of those protections before you try to do any kind of mediumship consciously. So what I'm saying is, if the spirit comes to you and you weren't looking for it, don't think, oh my God, I've been attacked. Okay? Now, is an attack possible? Yeah, but not for most of us. But when you're initiating the contact, anything can come in, because it's like you're saying, okay, guys, here I am, come and get me. Okay? Not smart unless you are protected. Okay? Now, the other thing about this whole thing with protection, I said it is possible that something could try to come in even if you haven't asked for it. It does happen. It's very occasional, but it does happen. If you're someone with a whole lot of natural ability and a lot of charisma, and maybe, you're going to do something very special out there in the world, there are entities on the other side who live on human energy. And if they know, maybe they can see the future far enough to know that you're going to be somebody special, and they want to take a ride on your energy. This is the reason why I say do not teach spirit communication to teenagers. Sorry, folks, if you're a teenager listening to this, I just basically said you are at risk if you're a teenager and you're trying to study not psychic development, that's fine, but spirit communication. Teenagers, that pineal gland, which is associated with the ability of mediumship, grows very large during those teenage years. And it makes you very, very vulnerable, not just to huge emotional mood swings, which we all know about. It also makes you very vulnerable to having a spirit invade you and do it so seamlessly that no one would even recognize it and you don't know how to get rid of it. Now, that could happen to anybody, but if you're a teenager, you're more susceptible. Folks, if you have a teenager who's playing with these things and you are a little worried about them, if you notice major changes in their behavior, if they were outgoing and suddenly they're recessive and quiet, if they don't want to involve themselves with other kids, or if they suddenly are changing a whole behavior where they're extremely aggressive or abusive to other kids, whereas they used to get along with everyone, yes, there is the possibility of them, especially if you know that they were playing around with psychic things, there's a possibility that something in spirit has invaded them. And what you do at that point is you shoot Sandy and Lisa an email, or you take them to your local priest or minister and you say, I think we have a problem. Let's do an exorcism on this kid. Okay? Sandy and Lisa do not do exorcisms. However, we could help you to identify if there really is that problem. Many times it's not. Many times it's just the kid going through behavioral problems too. It has to be identified. Okay, I can go deeper into this, but I just wanted you to have the understanding that for the most part, it's when we're reaching out without protection that you are at risk. If you're not reaching out, if it's just coming to you, 99.9% of the time, that visit is benevolent and it really was the person that you thought was there, and isn't that wonderful? That 0.1% where a spirit deliberately invades you is so rare, I sincerely doubt anybody here is ever going to have to worry about it. Okay? So, I think I already answered this. How do you protect yourself when you're doing spirit communication? Well, you see this guy putting himself in a blue bubble. If you know my energy balloon, some people have studied this in my psychic protection tips. You can put yourself in that blue energy balloon. You can put yourself into a channel. But in addition to those things, go to my website, learn how to invoke the archangels, learn the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. Very important. I also threw this in. Is it possible to see psychic and spirit communication ability in an astrology chart? And the answer is yes. You know, some people need that reassurance, okay? The planet we associate with things like being able to see and feel spirits and empathy is Neptune. Well, here's Neptune in the house of natural talents and abilities. This person would definitely have that mediumship ability. Uranus is the planet that we associate with channeling. Here it is in this person's first house. This person would also be a natural channel. So you see, we can look, and I'm not going to teach you astrology here, but you can look at the astrology chart and not only see these skills and abilities, but also be able to give direction on what would be the best way to develop them. So if you or somebody close to you has got things going on and wants to know how to develop it better, getting your astrology chart done by me or another astrologer and specifically looking at those areas is not a bad idea. Okay? Also, if you wanted to know how to control it, how to cap it, how to turn it on or off, you can also see that through this astrology chart. So, how do you know if your own spirit communication ability is awake? Folks, I'm going to tell you, I think if it's awake, you already know it. Okay? If it's already awake, you're hearing a voice, or you're seeing something moving out of the corner of your eye, or you're getting dreams that come from a source outside of yourself, and it's very clear to you that this is not something you'd be dreaming about, not something that you'd be thinking about. Some of us get waking visions. A lot of times it's not that we're seeing the spirit's communicating with us through a vision, through a feeling, through a thought pattern, and we recognize the thought pattern is not our own. Gee, I don't think like that. So we ask our husband who's sitting next to us, or our wife, were you just thinking about blah? And if they weren't, that thought had to be coming from somewhere. Is that the way your deceased dad would have felt about something? For me, I get fun things. I'm going to share some of these things because they're going to help you to identify when they're happening to you. I'll be sitting there watching the baseball game. Folks, I hate baseball. I don't watch baseball. I'll be sitting there watching a baseball game, which I'm unable to follow and don't even know how to score. And all of a sudden, I will consciously realize that I'm sitting there watching the baseball game. Now, why the heck am I doing that? And then I will hear inside my head my father's laugh because I turned that baseball game on for him so he could watch it through my eyes. How many of you have done that? Or I'll be preparing dinner, and all of a sudden, a song starts to go through my head that I haven't heard or sung since I was 12 years old in the Girl Scouts. And it could go through my head for 10 or 15 minutes before I realize it. And all of a sudden, why am I thinking of that? I hadn't thought of that song in years. And I'll realize my sister just passed by to say hello. She and I used to sing that song together when we played the guitar together. So pay attention to these things and look for things that you are either doing or enjoying or attracted to, and you'll realize that your deceased friends and relatives are constantly talking to you and communicating with you. You are not alone, folks. You're not ever alone. They're there. But for the most part, we're so busy with our everyday lives that we're not taking the time to realize that this thought wasn't our own. There was the time I was shopping in a store with a friend. It was after Halloween, and this pillow nearly jumped off the shelves at me. And I looked at it, and I said, oh my God, that's my sister and I. There was a picture of my sister and I when we were in our teens. She's obviously deceased. And it looked just like, it wasn't us, but it looked just like us. And that darn pillow jumped off the shelf and hit me. Okay? So I bought it and went home with it. And I said, thank you, Pam. She was visiting and saying hello. Be aware that you'll be looking at something and all of a sudden you'll register, why am I looking at that? And you'll remember that was your father or your mother or your best friend's favorite food or favorite color. And that's them having drawn your attention to that. I'm just passing by to say hi. You'll learn that if you have a question or if you need to have a sense of security, if you need to know that that person that cared so much about you is still there for you, even though they're in the spirit world, all you need to do is ask. Ask in your own heart. Ask of your higher self. Please alert me when they're near so that I know. I need to know. And you'll get more and more and more awareness of when they are there with you. That's, for most of us, how our own spirit communication ability begins to awaken. It awakens with the awareness of the people we cared about. And then it expands in a greater and greater way to other people's loved ones. And it goes on from there to help you to understand that we are definitely not alone in the universe. And it's a nice feeling. So what do you do about it if your ability is awakening? Not that I want to bore you. And I know you're not bored. That was tongue in cheek. Go to my website. It's www.sandyanastasi.com and find out about all the things that I teach. And right now you can even register to take the Anastasi system of psychic development because registration's open. Early registration is now open for my entire Anastasi system of psychic development that takes you from the very beginning stages of developing your basic skills all the way up to mediumship. And that begins the last Wednesday in January. So, and if you get in on board early, you're going to get a lot of extra discounts and extra bonuses, but you can find all about that on my website. Study my Psychic Protection Tips course. The full course is on my website, and so is my Psychic Development Tips course on my website. Study them, and if your pocketbook is hurting, you can also find all of my tips, or most of them, and most of my protection tips, as well as my psychic development tips on YouTube. So go to my YouTube channel and browse, and you'll get all of them there too. It doesn't drip to you the way it does on my website, but you can still get them. And my books are all available both on my website and also on Amazon.com. It's a 6-book series. Okay. I think this is important. And folks, let's just say this. I don't own the psychic world. If there's someone near you that's teaching in person and you're a person who likes to learn in person, study with them. If you're attracted to the writings of another psychic medium or spirit communication expert, if you're attracted to that, well, study it. The important thing is that if you feel that you have this ability, you learn to control the ability. Folks, don't be in a position like Carl Woodall was, where you're sitting on the stairway going crazy, with spirits literally walking through you, and knowing that something's dreadfully wrong with you, and in his case, vomiting 2 or 3 times an hour because he couldn't handle emotionally what was happening, and his friends dragged him into my class so that he could shut this down. Don't let it get to that point, folks. If this is beginning to unfold for you, let it unfold in joy. Let it be a wonderful experience. By the way, Carl turned it into a wonderful experience. He took all those classes almost 20 years ago, and today he teaches my system up in Atlanta, Georgia, to other people like you who want to develop their psychic abilities. Okay? So not only do I teach you how to develop it, I also have a teaching certification system that you could learn to teach it to other people. I think it's that important. But if you don't study with me, please, 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 please study somewhere, somehow, with someone. Get a handle on it. Don't let it control you. Okay? Now I'm going to open this next part of the session to questions and answers, hopefully, that'll come from my guides and your guides. Lisa, is there anybody who has got their hand raised or who has left a question in the chat room?
No, we don't have the hand icon on this. That's only on Psychic Hour.
Okay.
So they're either going to have to unmute to ask you, or they're going to have to pop something in this little chat thing.
Okay. So if you have a question, we do have a chat area. So go ahead and what we can do is if you have a question, just hit any key and put it in the chat room. Hit any key. You don't have to put your whole message in there, and Lisa can unmute you to ask your question when she knows you have one. I think we've got a bunch of shy people. I don't see any questions coming in, Lisa. Okay, folks, I'm going to give you a couple of more minutes. I feel like you guys have questions.
Hey,
Go ahead.
it's Kayara. Hi.
Hello, Kayara.
I have a question. Why this time of the year is so important to protect yourself during to the Thanksgiving the Halloween. Sorry.
That's actually a very good question. It's interesting. We talk about the year beginning in January, right? It didn't always begin in January. The old religions began the year not necessarily on October 31st, but around this time. Christ's birthday, they don't know when Jesus the Christ was really born. His birthday in some traditions was as early as mid-October, and in others was as late as February 2nd. Okay, so over the centuries, they've really played with this back and forth, and I think the reason for it is because the veil between the worlds, I'm using that term veil, the place where the dimensions have always been closest is around the end of October. Okay, so we come to, in fact, I was reading something recently that on October, the reason Halloween it originated, by the way, in Ireland, and it originated back when they were actually placating the spirits, because during that time, this is going to get kind of technical, but a lot of you know that we do have negative forces and positive forces in our universe. And around that time of the year, with the planes, the doorway between the planes being very easy to penetrate, a lot of those negative forces were having extraordinarily negative effects on people. And so Halloween actually began as, not giving out candy to kids, but, giving goodies to the spirits to try to keep them on their side and wearing masks so that they didn't know who you were. Okay. Um, it's interesting. And there are still cultures on our planet, for example, in Bali, they offer one day a year, and it's around the same time, where they let evil come out to play because they understand that that cap is going to burst off. It needs to come off for that one day. So the whole population stays indoors on that day, so that evil can have its sway, and then they close it the next day. So, Halloween is not something we turn into a candy and costumes holiday, which is the part of it that I love. But it is a time, because of the way the earth goes around the sun, where our dimensions are closer and easier to travel between. And of course, right now, because we're shifting, we're going through that dimensional shift ourselves, we're evolving, it's closer than ever. So as we get closer to Halloween this year, folks, if you, and I'm not going to say you should work with a Ouija board, please don't. But if you want to do, deep meditation, put yourself in protection first and see if any of your relatives or loved ones want to come through and just offer good things, good feelings for you. You can, again, I'm going to go back to Bali. I love this. Every morning in Bali, and they do this all year, storekeepers leave, they leave little offerings outside on the curb out of their store for the spirits, and they sweep everything, all the negativity outside, and then they put their little offering out to keep the store clear all day. We don't have those rituals in our world today, and we should, because they're good rituals. They recognize that there is a spirit world, and that spirit world dovetails with us, and more, the spirit world can have an effect on our world, and hopefully in a positive sense. I like to think that people that we love in the spirit world are in a higher and less dense and higher dimension than we are. I don't think all of them are, but the ones I love, most of them are. And they are constantly looking to help us to fulfill our destinies and to fulfill our dreams. They want the best for us, just like we want the best for them, just like they did when they were here. Okay, so if we're working with it in a sense of protection and understanding that we're one universe and we still can connect and relate, even though we each have our own function, we can lift that vibration. Kyra, I think I got a little bit off topic there, but did I answer your question?
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have a question?
I have a question.
Brandon, go ahead and unmute.
Hey, Sandy.
Hi there, Brandon.
So my question, I was a late joiner, but I was in when you were talking about the ghosts and haunted houses and not really being haunted. But my question is how do you know what the actual difference is between like a residual energy and just being able to do like soul retrieval without even acknowledging that that's what you're doing? You know what I mean? Like, how can you differentiate between this energy being like left over versus it's present and it's here right now? You know what I mean?
Well, first of all, that residual energy isn't going to move around. For example,
Okay.
residual energy is packed up in the corner of a room. There it is, packed up in the corner of a room.
Okay.
Okay? It doesn't, I know that for those of you who aren't already doing spirit communication, this might sound a little bit difficult, but it doesn't feel alive. A person's spirit feels alive.
Okay.
Okay? You feel
So
force energy. And
so
let me
go
answer
ahead.
one more part of that. when you're connecting with a person who's in spirit, they're also going to be trying to give you information. Sometimes, even if that person has buried themselves in their own version of purgatory or hell or whatever, you do run across spirits that had difficult times in life and are busy punishing themselves on the other side. Folks, I didn't mention that before, but this is a good time to do that. Whatever you think heaven or hell is what you're going to find on the other side. You're going to create that. We create our worlds, and even more when we pass, we create our destiny after we're dead. So whatever you think you're going to go to, guess what? You're going to go to it. And if you get a soul, when Brandon talks about soul retrieval, he's talking about a soul who maybe is trapped in their version of purgatory, or trapped in a time loop where they keep repeating the same patterns over and over again, or they're trapped into their own negative feeling of remorse. If you get a soul who's in that kind of situation, you may have to, tap them a few times. You may have to remind them of events that happened in life. You might have to, bring up some fun, exciting things that they maybe forgot about, but eventually you will get their attention and there will be communication. And that's another way, Brandon, that you can definitely tell that you've got someone in spirit. It's not just residual energy hanging out in a corner.
Okay.
Now,
Thank you.
did I answer your question, or did you have something else you wanted to ask there?
Well, I have a secondary question, but I think you answered it. I do. My secondary follow-up question was more about a personal experience, so that's okay.
Okay, and let's let a few other people go, and if there's time, you can come back on with that. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I know somebody else tried to come on and talk at the same time you did. So who was that?
That was me.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi. Yeah, so my question was, a lot of people are doing these different type of ceremonies these days with plant medicine. And I was curious because, in those situations, it seems like that would be an opportune time for maybe certain spirits to come in when a person is lost consciousness. And I was just wondering if that's a common thing, because I had an experience recently where I was in one and I felt like I was struggling with something that was trying to come in.
I absolutely know what you're talking about, and I fully agree with you, and I don't think it was your imagination.
Okay.
Folks, there are some things that we're not meant to mess around with. One of the things, and some of you might be angry with me for talking about this, but one of the things that comes to mind is ayahuasca, which is kind of common right now. And folks, if you are working with a Peruvian shaman in Peru, where ayahuasca is part of life and it's part of their religious ceremonies, you probably are going to be safe because you're going to have his guidance, and he's going to make sure everything is protected. If you're working with somebody who's in the United States, who says he studied with a shaman and he is a shaman now, and let's go on this journey together, I would have great reservations, and I probably wouldn't do it because that individual is not going to know how to keep you safe. Okay? The same thing is true of working in the American Indian tradition. There are different roots and herbs that the Indians used to get out of body, to release the energy body from the physical body. Well, if you're working with a really true shaman, you're safe because he's protecting you. Most of the people these days who say, well, I'm a shaman, aren't. To become a shaman in any of these traditions generally takes about 40 years of living with a real shaman daily, on a day-to-day basis, and learning everything that person knew. Okay, most people in today's world don't have the patience for that kind of training. So please use your intelligence when you're getting involved with those kinds of things. Okay, investigate the person who's doing it. Find out what their background really is. Did that help?
Right. It did. Thank you. Thank you.
That said, if you feel as if you were invaded by something in one of those ceremonies, There are other traditions. For example, there's a form of Hawaiian shamanism that can, if you go to that person and have yourself cleansed soon enough afterwards, can clear that out of you. So if you feel like you might have picked something up you can't get rid of, contact me and I'll put you in touch with one of the guys I know who can help.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. And does anybody else have a question?
I have a question.
Okay, Jennifer, go on.
If you tried to communicate with someone who had passed on, let's say 20 or 30 years ago, would they have already reincarnated? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, would I?
Not necessarily, okay? This is it's one of those things that's individual situation. Somebody might incarnate and then go on to the other side and not come back again for 300 or 400 years. Somebody else
Okay.
pass and reincarnate with the next generation. It's an individual thing. One of the things that's interesting, and I understand why you could be a little bit concerned about residual energy. A lot of please close your mic while I'm talking. Our mics aren't compatible. That's why we're getting the feedback. A lot of times when somebody passes and then reincarnates, and we do call this residual energy too, not to be confused with the psychic energy, which I was talking about as just a projection of energy, has nothing to do with the person who was dead. It's just human energy having collected. I call that residual energy hanging out in a household because we all stared at that TV. But mediums also refer to residual energy if a person has reincarnated and now they're in a new body. It's possible as a psychic medium to connect with that. Some mediums will call it residual energy. I think of it as them literally having left like a piece of themselves on that plane. So you can connect with that part of them that has the memory, but it can't see what you're doing every day because it's only the memory. It's literally like having left their footsteps. Is that making sense to you?
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, and the way
Thank you.
you would know the difference when you're making the connection is that the person who is really in spirit, they can tell you what you had for breakfast this morning, okay? Because they didn't just, they don't just have their memories. Now they might want to talk about the memories, they might want to talk about what they used to do. The thing is, the one that has reincarnated can only talk about what they used to do. There's no knowledge of what's going on in the now. Okay? So there is a way of telling the difference.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions?
Hi, Sandy. I have a question.
Go ahead, David.
Everything. So, actually, just a little psychic connection here. I actually had the same exact question that Brandon had, which you answered. Mm-hmm. But I have an additional question for that. So, before you attempt to, I guess, connect to the ghost or haunted spirit, or even like the residual energy, do you do the lesson banishing ritual of the pentagram before you do it?
Absolutely. Yeah. If someone says to me, Sandy, I think I've got I can't tell if it's a ghost or residual energy hanging out in my house, before I even go in the house, I'm going to have done my protections. And that's for a lot of reasons, David. Part of it is just that in case there is something negative there, I don't want to get invaded. But the other part is there's very often in people's households so much going on energetically.
Yeah.
It's very hard to, unless you are protected from the get-go, it's hard to separate all that energy out and feel what's really going on. So it's important to have protections in place so that you are that still point, because you have to be still yourself inside to be able to recognize all the energies that are going on around you.
Yeah, it makes sense. So would I do the protection, let's say in my car, and then go inside the house?
You could do that. You could even do the protection before you leave your house and just keep it around you.
So the last vanishing return of Pentagon can like follow me around if that's my like intention,
Yes,
right? Is that
yes.
okay?
It's all about intent. It's all about
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Great question, David. Thank you. Anybody else? These are some great questions, folks. You guys are
I
real.
think Les had a question in the chat room if they, Les or Heather, whichever one it is, if they want to come on. Les, Heather, you want to unmute?
I'm kind of looking. I don't see that one. I could answer it right in the chat room. See it, but
Oh, it just says, is there anything to the small lights that I sometimes see? Are those spirits?
you know, that's kind of an open-ended question. Spirits, this is kind of fun. Spirits are attracted to human energy. So a lot of times when you're at a party or carnival, you're going to see all these orbs, we call them, little lights around. And the thing is, some of them could just be exuberant energy that all the people having fun are projecting. But there could also be among those orbs, there could be orbs that are actual spirits, and that's the form they're taking. So you can have both. You can have both. If I was physically present at that party, I would be able to tell you if it was someone who was visiting to say hi and share the experience with you, or if it was just little energy balls that were being thrown out by all the fun and joy. But not being there, I couldn't tell the difference after the fact. But if you pay attention and if you focus on one of them, you should be able to feel if there's something different about it. Okay, I hope that helped. That was a good question. Is there anybody else who's got a question?
There is someone else who wrote a book. Mary, you wrote a book, but I'm going to let her unmute and come on and ask you. Mary, can you unmute your phone? Hello, Mary. And she may not be able to get her phone unmuted, so I'm going to read what she wrote. And it's a long one, so bear with me. It says, I've had premonition dreams and heard voices and had guides communicate directly with me. Once I was giving a presentation and someone took over and said something that was not even in my head. Immediately, I said in my head, who is that? But one time I was waking up and I heard a lot of sound in my head. It sounded like a lot of people talking at the same time, like the noise that you hear when you walk into an assembly hall before a meeting begins. I tried to continue breathing the same as I had before and not do anything to be noticed while I was listening to what this was. Then I heard a man's voice say, she's waking up. And immediately there was the fuzzy-like sound that you hear when a loud sound stops abruptly. What was I hearing?
I'll have to laugh. I'm sorry, not laughing at you, laughing with you. Obviously, you are a telepath, okay? And your psychic senses are waking up, obviously, including your telepathy. My husband, who happens to be quite a gifted telepath, for many years had that same, loud noise. I used to think of it as white noise, and he'd be there half asleep, and I'd hear him say, "Okay, guys, either turn it up or turn it off," because he'd have this bunch of conversations all at once happening in his head. And what was really going on, his antenna was out. He was in what we call alpha state, and he was literally picking up the thought waves of a million other people. Okay? And he had to learn to tell them if they wanted him to hear one conversation, turn it up or turn it all off because I don't want to hear it. And so he learned to control it consciously by telling them that you might give that a shot. If there's one conversation you want to hear, turn that one up, turn all the others off, or turn it all off. I want peace in my head right now. But what you're talking about is telepathy. And I think it's really wonderful that you're recognizing it. And when you were coming up out of your into your waking state, and you heard she's waking up now, that probably was your guides telling whoever it was who was trying to talk to you and whose voice was getting lost in all those other voices. Well, she's waking up. So, okay, you lost your opportunity. She's waking up now. But next time that happens, tell them either turn it up so I can hear it or turn it off. Okay. And, that the first part, I'm sorry, Lisa, she had two questions there actually. And the first part was something different. Could you read that first part of it again?
I think you just answered it. She just said, who said that?
Okay, so I did answer that. No, the first part of it was when she was talking about sometimes standing in front of a group giving a lecture, and all of a sudden somebody was, who said that, somebody was talking through her and saying something that she didn't say. That happens if you're a telepath and you're in channel, and your guides could have said that. Or my students, I do this all the time. My students are constantly telling me how I'm answering their questions that they never got a chance to ask. Because you see, my guides are hearing your question that's in your mind, and they funnel the answer through me. You're doing the same thing. Okay? Kind of cool. If it gives you the heebie-jeebies, if you're not sure who your guides are, do the archangel invocation, and do the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram before you go out on stage to talk. And then you'll know that anything that comes through is going to be safe. It's going to be your higher self and your guides, not some random person coming through and giving you information you don't really want to convey. And I hope that helped. I think it's kind of cool. You've got some nice stuff going on there. I think that's exciting. Okay, folks, I'm going to go back and tell Brandon if you have that other question, you want to come in and share it.
Sure.
It'll be my last question this evening. So I think everybody's waiting with bated breath to hear this personal story. Go ahead, Brandon.
Okay, so my original question was about the soul retrieval and residual energy. My second question is kind of a follow-up to it because during my spiritual, I'll call it reawakening, I had a panic attack as soon as I walked into my partner's apartment at the time. And I was shown images and it was maybe 3 seconds long, but it was a whole lifetime of the events of this person or of this residual energy. But then nothing followed up once it was done and over with. Maybe because I have my panic attack and I was completely caught off guard. I'm not sure. I've enjoyed that experience looking back on it, but what would be that determining factor into that being just residual energy or a live and present spirit or haunting?
Yeah, from what you're describing, honestly, it could have been either.
Okay.
I walked into that space and the same thing happened to me, I would know. And the reason I would know would be because instead of having a panic attack, which you really didn't have because you're prone to panic attacks, it was because it was unexpected, okay? You'd never dealt with anything like that before. Well, now that you know, if it should happen again, you won't turn it off. You see, right. It's entirely possible that there really was a soul who was around your partner, who was trying to communicate their life experience to you and was really excited. I finally have somebody who I can talk to. But when that soul realized that it was causing you distress, it backed off. That's quite possible.
Okay.
It's also possible that your partner was just living in a space that had residual energy from a lot of people who had lived there, who had gone through those experiences. You see, it could have been either one. I'm sorry to lay this on you and wow, I don't know, but I really can't tell you that unless you feel it. Okay. Now, if you can go back and remember that moment, how it felt, if it all came to you at once, which could happen in either way. Okay, it's a little hard when you're getting this download and you get 1,000 bits of information at the same time, and then you have to sort them out. That
Yeah.
could happen if somebody's so excited and then they're talking to you all at once and they're downloading it all at once. Or it could happen because empathically you connected to the energy in that room all at once. Again, either way. But
Right.
what would have been different is that if it was residual, it would have still been there. If it
Okay.
was a soul trying to connect with you, when it stopped, you could not have reconnected.
Okay, I think that's a very valid point because I could tell that it was like a charge, like as if I had walked into him or he had walked into me, and then it was gone. So I think, okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, that was a good question. Good question. And we have here in Florida, we have a town nearby called Arcadia that it's a very old town, like Old West town. And there are a lot of places along the main street that people say is haunted, among which is an old movie theater. Well, not movies. Back then it was a regular theater. And they do ghost hauntings there where they come in and they measure the different things. And I've been in there numerous occasions. And it's interesting because in most places, what you're feeling is residual energy. And there is residual energy all over that theater. Okay. And yet there have been times that I was in it, usually when I was by myself looking, because it turned into an antique shop for a while. When I was in there looking for an antique, where all of a sudden I would feel something move by. So yes, it's haunted. But most of the time, what they're taking measurements on isn't a spirit, it's the residual energy that was left behind in there. The thing is, as a psychic, as a spirit medium, you can definitely feel these things. Lisa can't you? Because Lisa is very familiar with the place I'm talking about. And why don't you come on and talk about that, Lisa?
Yeah, I was involved with one of the ghost hunting teams, a professional team, and they took us to that theater. And I think we went about 1 o'clock in the morning. And the minute that you were going up the steps, you could feel the bounce of the energy because it was almost like at that point, they really didn't want you coming in. So you had kind of a pressure to stay out. But once you got in, it was wonderful. And yeah, there's energy everywhere in the air, but also on all of the antiques, like you were talking about that you walk around. It was amazing because I would be sitting there looking at one of the antiques, and I knew somebody was tapping me on the shoulder. You could feel it, and then your hair would start raising, and it was a wonderful experience. I don't know what else I can say. And then we went to the old dentist office that was like 100 years old, but still a building, and that was freaky,
Yeah,
but fun.
I've been in there recently, and I do not like the vibes in there.
Yeah, it was not the same kind of energy at all
No.
that you get in the theater.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm hypersensitive to those things, and it was pretty amazing.
Okay. Lisa, thank you for sharing. That's a great note to end on. Folks, I have a course like this, a one night overview that is coming up in a month from now. If you go on my website, you'll be able to register for it. You can see it. If this interested you, if you want to know more about your own psychic abilities, how to develop them, what they are, join me on that program as well. I'd love to have you. And I guess that's it for this evening. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Good night, everyone. Be well.
Thank you.